Hello music fans, welcome to the Death by Unicorn channel, to another episode of my segment called What's New 2023, where we talk about new albums that came out in the past week in metal, rock, and prog, and I talk about them in my order of preference. So let's start this week with Nine Skies and their album The Lightmaker that came out on September 18th. This is progressive rock. It's the fourth album by this French band. They play in a neo-prog style, and I really like their last album 5.20 from 2021. I think this band should be much bigger in the prog world. I love their interesting arrangements and the instruments they use, like violin and saxophone. Their last album featured a guest solo from the legendary Steve Hackett of Genesis, which was amazing. This album's also great. It has some great guest appearances. I think fans of Genesis, Porcupine Tree, and Steven Wilson will like this album. My favorite tracks are The Architect, which features Marco Miniman and John Mitchell, and The Lost, which features Christopher Gildenlow. Next on my list is Subsignal and their album A Poetry of Rain. This is kind of between progressive metal and rock, maybe leaning a little bit more to the metal sometimes. It's the sixth album by this German band. It's another one for fans of Porcupine Tree and maybe Riverside, because it's got progressive metal, but it's not too heavy. It leans more into progressive rock rather than metal in a lot of songs. It's all clean vocals, no harsh vocals or screaming. It's got some atmospheric vibes and some sadness to it. So check it out if that sounds interesting to you. And the third album on my list today is That Joe Payne and his album Bread and Circuses. This is progressive synth pop. It's very different from what I usually listen to. It's the third album by this solo artist from the UK who used to be in the prog rock band The Enid. This is very poppy, but it's great sophisticated pop with a lot of 80s influence. I think fans of Bruno Mars, Michael Bublé, and Queen will like this, as there's some parts on this album that sound like each of those groups. And the first song, Fallen in Love is Easy, is great. Definitely the catchiest, possibly my favorite song on the album. I didn't really like the second song as much. I was worried that the first song might have been a fluke and the rest of the album would be a dud. But the album picks up again. It has some songs with a Broadway show tunes vibe that reminded me of Michael Bublé. I wasn't a fan of the song called Fucking Fucked, as it was lyrically a little bit too gimmicky, and I kind of wish he didn't have to drop so many F-bombs on this track. I'm usually all for artists saying whatever they want, and I'm not usually bothered by swear words in music, but this could have been a great album to listen to with my wife and 10-month-old son, but now I'll always have to skip that song around my son so he doesn't say the F word. But all in all, it was a really solid album, just with a couple weaker tracks holding it back from being top 100 of the year potential for me. So this one won't be making my year-end list, but it is a pretty cool kind of progressive synth pop with 80s vibe. So check out That Joe Payne if that sounds interesting to you. Next up, number 4 on my list for this week is Bruce Soord and his album Luminescence. This is kind of progressive rock, but it's like kind of folky singer-songwritery, sad boy music as well. Another one that I think fans of Porcupine Tree and Steven Wilson will like. This is the fourth solo album by the founder and frontman of the Pineapple Thief. That's the name of Bruce Soord's band that he's most known for. Really solid album, but it definitely has the same mood and vibe the whole way through, so that would be my complaint. It's all kind of soft acoustic singer-songwriter songs, but there's a lot of cool orchestral and synth ambience behind it, so there's really big production value to this, and it sounds really good, but it's all kind of this very sad, soft acoustic singer-songwriter stuff. Fifth album on my list this week is Thy Art is Murder with their album Godlike. This is Deathcore. It's the sixth album by this Australian band. I listened to the single Join Me in Armageddon before the album came out. It has great riffs and intensity. Brutal growling vocals and breakdowns are what this album is all about. So check this out if you're in the mood for a mosh pit. If you're a fan of bands like Lorna Shore, Suicide Silence, Chelsea Grin, then you'll like this. And second last one I'm going to mention today is an EP by a band called Annisokay. It's called Abyss Part 1. This is post-hardcore. It's got some metal and pop influences in there. It's the third EP from this German band. They've released 5 full-length albums, with their first dropping back in 2012. Really solid, catchy post-hardcore EP, but nothing too special or memorable here, so I probably won't go back to it much. And the last album that I listened to over the past week is Cannibal Corpse and their album Chaos Horrific. This is death metal, and it's the 16th album by this American band. And I'm not really into straightforward meat and potatoes death metal like this. I just checked it out because they're a big name. They do this style well. All in all, if all you want is some really heavy brutality, you won't be disappointed by this. But for me, it's kind of like once you've heard one song, you've pretty much heard them all. It was a bit disappointing for me because I like a little bit more variety in my music, and this is all kind of just crushing riffs and brutality growling from start to end. Some people like that, so if you like that, check this out. For me, I probably won't go back to it at all. And that's it for my first impression of these 7 new albums that came out over the past week in metal, rock, and prog. Let me know if anything else great came out recently down in the comments, and let me know what you think of these ones. And until next time, peace out.